Kia ora and welcome to CIO Leadership Live New Zealand. I'm your host, Kathy O'Sullivan, editor for CIO New Zealand. My guest today is Terry Karagianis, Chief Digital Officer at Harrison Grierson. Hey Terry, how are you going today?
Good, thanks Kathy, happy to be here.
Oh, you're warmly welcome on this very cold Auckland day, unseasonably cold for Auckland today. It was indeed. So to kick things off, can you tell us a little bit more about your role and what your team at Harrison Grierson does?
Yeah, so Harrison Grierson, for those that don't know, is an urban development consultancy. So that spans engineering, planning, surveying, three waters and others. And my role at Harrison Grierson is as the Chief Digital Officer, which is really what I say to my team is head cheerleader for all things digital and them. So that basically encompasses one part is about accelerating our digital strategy, ensuring that we can evolve to be able to continue to thrive, I guess, in the digital economy. And the other part is leading the HG Digital team, which is made up of both IT as well as our internal functions, so really around IT and data, and then our external facing but internal supporting, if you like, functions, which is really about our digital solutions and delivery team who are delivering for our clients.
Chief cheerleader for digital. I love that. Great phrase, and definitely something I think a lot of chief digital officers will resonate with. So obviously transformation is a huge part of what you and your team does at Harrison Grierson. And transformation, it is used quite often as a buzzword, or it's misused or overused. And often the word transformation, it's just seen as a given within organizations, but in reality, transformation is a hard thing to do. So how has that approach taken shape in your own career?
I think the really tricky part about, I hate the word transformation because it seems big and clunky and hard, and it is all of those things. But, when you think about digital transformation, a lot of people think it's the technology. We're transforming to use the technology. And I guess the biggest part about transformation is about people, and it's actually about mindset. And that's, I think, why it is so hard, because it is about changing those things, and evolving those to be thinking about how might we do things differently in this organization. The technology in theory is the easy bit, but what I would say is it's definitely shaped how we're approaching our journey, and probably I say it from having lots of scar tissue and not approaching it the right way, if there is a right way, over the years. I think in my career I've been part of transformations that have tried to make it a big technology project. I've been part of transformations that have tried to do it by creating a special team in the corner, and that only creates, I guess, a feeling of I guess resistance, or what's going on over there, or why are we doing it that way, that kind of thing. So I think how we're approaching it, I always talk about this with our teams, it's about how we inspire people to think differently about what they've always done, and for that not to feel scary, because I say it like that because it can be, if you've done, for example, if you've done the same job, you've been in doing the same job for a long time, or even in the same organization, you've got a rhythm and all of those things. Change can feel, incredibly unsettling. And also, I guess, with new technology, without understanding how that's going to look, there is an unsettlingness about that, because you go, okay, well, I have a job if we do things in a more digital way, as opposed, I guess, to what we're trying to do, I guess, and there's no silver bullet and it's not perfect, so I can sit here and I can talk about it, but we're in a continuous learning cycle, I guess, of how this looks because it's down to how people interpret what you say and what, you know, how you approach things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and you know, in relation to your question around transformation, I think the biggest thing is it's about mindset and it's about culture change, and the way that you can help people on that journey is really about storytelling, and it's about helping them understand what it means, the opportunities and what it means, and also how they get involved and shaping what that could look like. And I think, you know, it's not, you won't get 100% of people wanting to do that, but if you involve them in the conversation, I guess that can take some of that and you know, unsettledness away.
Yeah, and putting people at the heart of it, I think, is essential, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
Walking back from that end product of transformation, and I know it's a word that you don't like, and many people don't like it. It is quite a scary word for people. But what are some of the key steps CIOs must take along the way? Is there ever a starting point to kick off a transformation journey?
I mean, it's meeting where you're at. I think it's starting from insights, your people, starting with people and starting with insights, real insights, I guess, on where you're at as a company. You know, what are your clients telling you? What are your people telling you? You know, what are your financials telling you? You know, and what are your problems to solve in that regard? Because I think the other thing about transformation is it feels big and clunky because it is kind of all encompassing. You know, effectively it impacts the whole organization. So the other thing that I think is important is taking an insight-led approach to prioritization, which is really about really understanding the problems to solve and thinking about impact of what their impact is on what you're trying to achieve, and then prioritizing or taking slivers of, a subset, I guess, of those, prioritizing the top 3 things, for example, that are, it might be just one in your organization, but it's as much about getting a rhythm of, evolving things and taking people along the journey in those steps than it is about anything else. And I think that's how you can make progress on it. So I guess that was my long-winded way of saying prioritizing based on insights.
Excellent.
Really, yeah.
So there are, of course, challenges in any transformation. What are some of the kind of common roadblocks that you've encountered, and how would other CIOs either avoid them or deal with them along the way?
I think leadership is really key. And I think I say that because traditionally the types of people we've had in let's call them leadership roles, have been people good at managing business. And I think this is a different kind of, this requires a different kind of person. So I guess ensuring that you've got strong leadership. And when I say strong leadership, what I mean is people that start with a care for people, actually want to look, are there. And I talk about, obviously I led with cheerleader. I led with that because I think, although it's a yucky analogy in terms of someone jumping up and down with pom-poms, but what it does is it says that you're there to really support them and champion them and then unblock their way, and that's, so I guess leaders, ensuring you have the right leaders in place. And I guess, like I say, that for me starts with care. The second piece is really around clarity. Ensuring that you're clear on where you're going, what you're trying to achieve, the why, what are you trying to achieve? Because with those 2 things, clarity on what you're trying to achieve, and then people who are all in the waka with you and leading from the front is key. That doesn't mean just because you've got clarity around your strategy that it's all going to be straightforward and no problem, we'll just do this step after this step. What it means is, because transformation is about mindset change and people change largely, it means that we're going to lean into the challenges as they arise and we're going to approach them with care. So, that's how I look at it. So it's about leadership and it's about clarity for me in terms of, from a CIO perspective, how I'd be looking at it.
Excellent. So I'm curious then, Terry, do you like to think of transformation as, a project with deliverables and milestones and celebrating the wins and having deadlines on things? Or do you think that transformation is just an ongoing development within a business? So, is there ever an end date to transformation?
I think when I think about transformation, I think about it as a way of being. Even as I talk about digital transformation in our organisation and previous organisations, it was about digital becoming just the way that we do things, not a team on the side, just the way, because that then says that we are doing, we've evolved and we're doing that. So I guess in answer to your question, for me, it's a way of being, because whether it be, new technologies, whether it be changing client expectations, whether it be, new expectations from top talent, whatever that looks like, it's got to be, it's more impactful if it's just the way that we, it's the way of being, and then becoming more adaptable and able to make decisions with what may be not full information. You have facts, but you might not have as full a picture as you have had before because of the pace you've got to do it. I think that's the evolution.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess that's that whole agile and nimble approach to things, right?
Yeah.
So as Chief Digital Officer, in what ways do you collaborate and influence the organization and its leadership team?
Yeah, I think it's a big part, and I talk about this with my boss all the time. I guess it's a big part about inspiring people to think differently about what we've always done. In terms of influencing, I spend a lot of time trying to meet people where they're at, to try and get an idea of how might we tell these stories in a way that connects people to it and doesn't make it something that they're pushing back on. It's a real deep understanding of stakeholders and the people in the organization. And you don't get it, I say that, but it's really hard. You don't get it right every time. And just because I say, transformation, that doesn't mean someone understands it. Or just because I say data strategy, doesn't mean someone will understand those things. So I think the key thing in answer to your question is really about really understanding the audience and taking the time to understand that, and then crafting the stories together. Because what I find, and we do it a lot in the exec team here, is that we work together on the story, because I might talk about the how we might enable it from a digital perspective, but then our chief operations officer, for example, will talk about how he hears it and what makes it make sense for him. And I think that's the power is in that collaboration and really working together on that, and the narrative that then you tell the story around the organization.
And I guess that helps get the buy-in, right, as well, if you've got the same message going across the organization from your leaders.
Yeah. The other thing I was just going to say, the other thing that we do is we've done more recently is, we've just launched a new strategy. And so we've made it so that I'm not talking to digital, and the chief people officer will talk to it, or the chief operations, and I will talk to other things. I'll talk to our people strategy and those things. And I think that also helps, because you're not staying in your comfort zone. You're going, how might I tell these stories in a way that will make sense for people? And it's a continuous improvement approach too, because again, it's just because it makes sense to you doesn't mean it makes sense to everybody else.
So then, Terry, what do you think are some of the key attributes of a successful CIO when it comes to leadership? I mean, it's a role that's evolving. There's a lot more chief digital officers, CTOs. What do you think makes a successful CIO/CDO?
I put it down to, and I talk about the 3 C's, and I talk about it as it relates to culture, but I think it's very similar. And so number 1 for me is a genuine care for people. I know that we're talking about a technical role, so I know that, but I also think what good looks like in that probably looks different to what it did 5 years ago. the second part is really around providing clarity and really in terms of the story that we're telling around it. So really in terms of our strategy, you know, as an organisation, really understanding that why do they care about the technology side of things, but actually it's more about, you know, from an experience perspective, why do they care? How does it make sense? And that's about getting to know people and being curious about that. And the third one is really around continuous improvement. You know, I think, you know, definitely you need the technical understanding, but I'm not convinced you need that at the CIO level anymore. Might be controversial, but I do think it's about leadership, and it's about you know, being able to empower people, you know, to really get excited about a vision, and then I guess, you know, really unblocking that way, and actually you know, really influencing through people, and then also I guess enabling from a decision-making perspective, I guess, you know, how do we get the best brains in the room and create environments where we can actually, inclusive environments where we can actually solve problems that are quite challenging. Because transformation as a problem solver, if you like, there's a whole subset of little problems underneath that you're really trying to solve. So yeah, it's, for me, it's about that care, the clarity, and a real continuous improvement approach and commitment, I guess, to leadership, leading.
And underlining again, back to the people. The people are so important in all of this.
Yeah, and I think that's why I guess I see a shift in what's needed, because, you know, traditionally it's looked at as a really deep technical role. Don't get me wrong, you need the technical expertise. I guess I would just be challenging where it comes from.
So on the people piece then, you know, it's a tight labour market, you know, there's way more roles than there are people to fill them. So how are you creating an internal culture that really helps thrive, you know, your people thrive and feel like they're really achieving their goals at work?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, particularly I think when I say that it's based on what environment we've all been living in for the last couple of years. So for us, for me, and for the team, it's about, you know, I talked about leaders and leaders and that genuine care underpinning that. I think over the past couple of years, you know, work and life has blurred, you know, and it's been something that's not going to go away necessarily. I also think, you know, we've experienced something that has had varying impacts on people, but those impacts have been probably on our well-being. And so I guess, in answer to your question, first and foremost, it's really about creating an environment where people feel cared for in ways that they probably haven't been cared for at work before. And that's about, I guess, when I say that, I mean understanding people at a personal level, and not just I turn up to work and I do a job level. So, you know, we work really hard in my leadership team to create an environment like that, where people, you know, feel, I guess, cared for, but equally feel like they have a voice in our team. Because I think that's the other thing, you know, historically, you might have had diversity of thought, but you may not have had inclusion. And in my mind, it doesn't work like that. So, you know, it's really about looking out for people's well-being. And then the other part is about it's personal. So employee value propositions are personal now. I think that is the difference. So when I say that, what I mean is, you know, I've got two young children, a 9 and 11-year-old, and for me, good looks like, for me to be the best mum I can be, I want to pick them up, you know, I want to have Monday where I get my life admin sorted, but I also pick them up from school. At the moment, they think I'm cool. May not be for much longer, but I'm going to go with that. But my point being is, whatever it is that's important to your people, is personal. And I guess what I'm getting at is I just think we need to approach, as organisations, we need to approach that in that way. And then, because I then think it's a win-win, you know, think about then achieving our organisational goals. If they have a say in what they look like, those goals, and how we might get there, and we're supporting them as an organisation personally, you know, and what, you know, enabling them to be the best they can be, then I think that is how, you know, we want to approach, you know, teams and looking after people, and I can hand on heart say we do that in our team. You know, we do our best to do that.
So Terry, I'm glad that you talked about diversity in one of your answers there. And why do you think we don't have enough diversity in IT roles, and what practical things do you think can be done to attract more people from different backgrounds we have many of these roles going? Why don't we have enough diversity in IT roles?
Well, first of all, I'm proud to say at Harrison Grierson that 4 out of 5 of my lead team are actually women. Not actually women, they're women. And not because I was trying to hit a stat, because it was, you know, they were right people for the role. But what I'd say about that is when you get the mix right, when you get it, and I'm probably on the other scale now, I'm probably not diverse enough, haven't got enough men, but I guess you get that diversity of thought in terms of how you hire, how you solve problems, you know, and you see it play out in that way. Also, I talked about care a lot and well-being, and I think, you know, and this is not a generalization, but a little bit, you know, generally speaking, women often come at it from a place of care, but again, the magic happens when you're working together and you're one team regardless, you know, but it's also, I guess, influencing who you hire, you know, what you're approaching it, you know, how you're approaching hiring or attracting talent, and what that looks like. And I think that helps with diversity. But, you know, obviously diversity is not just male, female, it's age and it's ethnicity and all of those things. So, yeah, I think mixing it up is really important, particularly at a leadership level.
So, Terry, I'm really curious, what have been some of the mistakes that you've made along the way that have really shaped you as a leader, that looking back on them, you know, there was a really good lesson in there?
I think it's a lot about how you've told the story, how you've, you know, for me, one of the biggest things was don't put people in a bucket. You know, don't put people in a, you know, really understand your audience. And I've probably over the years not done that, and not necessarily always taken the time to get to know people and understand where they're coming from. It's been, I mean, I've been in influencer roles for a long time. Before doing this role, I did a lot of influencing roles, sort of matrix management roles, and they are incredibly difficult if you don't know your stakeholders. So the other thing is, one of the things that I would say is around the magic that happens when you hear from everybody, particularly solving problems where there's no known answer, you know, not the easy stuff, and you always land in a better place. And so I guess over time, I've become quite an advocate for really making space for others.
That's great. I love that saying, what the magic that happens when you listen to everybody. I think a lot of people could learn from that.
Yeah, and it's yeah, I remember leading with a colleague of mine our first Agile squad at Mercury, and we really, you know, took that approach of, you know, effectively empowering the team to make the calls, to do the work, to make the calls. And it was a highlight. It was a career highlight because, and it comes down to hearing from everybody and everyone being clear about what we were trying to achieve, but then having a voice in how we got there.
Great to hear. So then finally, Terry, can you tell us what's important to you in the months ahead?
Do you know, number one is well-being. Well-being for the team. And I say that because it's not an easy fix, and I don't have all the answers around it, but it's something at Harrison Grierson we're really focused on. How might we do this? How might we support people through times of uncertainty? How might we support burnout? How might we support the anxiety that's come from the last couple of years? So I know I'm in a CIO interview and everything, but it's people again, because we can only achieve what we want to achieve if we're all in it together and supporting each other to get there. And I feel like it's a big risk right now, and it's in terms of how organisations tackle it or don't. The other thing is around, and they're probably interlinked, is really listening, continuing to listen to our people as well as our clients, because what we're clear on is that the future is uncertain. We've seen it with COVID, we continue to see it with climate change, and it's only going to continue with technology change as well. And so that just means that the competitive advantage of an organisation comes down to our people's ability to adapt and to learn in real time, I'll say, almost build the plane while it's flying. And that's quite a shift. And the only way you do that is through real leadership and working together. Yeah,
absolutely. In these uncertain times, resilience and building up well-being has never been more important. Terry Karygiannis, Chief Digital Officer at Harrison Grierson, thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome. I've loved talking to you.